Good morning, Eights. This is Mr.Westra with Half Brother 29, part number 2. Should we call Dad, I asked, looking at the glowing phone booth outside the gas station. No, Mum said. We'll be home soon enough. We drove. After a while, Zan fell asleep against me, and I didn't move in case I woke him. Before long, I was asleep too. When I woke, it was 6:30 and beautiful, the sun rising up over the rocky hills. Are you tired? I asked Mum. Getting there, she said. I'm good for another few hours, then we'll stop somewhere for breakfast. We didn't go into a restaurant. We bought stuff at a gas station and ate in the car. We didn't want anyone seeing Zan, if possible. Now that he was awake, I was a little worried about how he'd behave. Mostly he was pretty good. He could stare out the window for a long time, the wind in his face, just hooting and signaling at all the things he saw. He'd never spent much time in a car, so this was all new, and I think he loved it. We'd filled the back with all the blankets and favorite toys from his suitcase, his own moving playroom. Once he crawled into the front seat and put his hand on the wheel. He didn't turn it or anything, but Mum slowed right down and pulled over. We were both very strict with him and told him he had to stay in the back. Sorry, he signed, and felt bad enough that he actually let me buckle him in for a while. 15 minutes later, when he wanted out, it took him about 2 seconds to figure out how to undo the buckle. Registering at the motel wasn't too tricky. Mum just left me and Zan in the car while she checked in at the office, and then we carried Zan in, all wrapped up in a blanket like a big baby, and double-locked the door. We bathed him. Mum said it was like a scene in the Bible where Moses parts the Red Sea. Huge waves and water everywhere. People getting doused and drowned. Mum and I both ended up soaked, but afterwards Zan smelled a lot better, though he still didn't let us put a diaper on him. When Mum went out to buy us some food for dinner, she got a bunch of new clothing for Zan, since he was going through it so fast and we had no way of cleaning it. Mum was fantastic. I knew she didn't want Zan ending up in a lab either, but I got the feeling she was doing this mainly for me. We didn't talk about what would happen when we got home. We just talked about getting there. The next day we drove through Oregon and Washington and reached Port Angeles. We took the last ferry over to Victoria. It was very late when we pulled up in the driveway, and Zan was so excited I thought he was going to knock himself out trying to get out of the car. He obviously hadn't forgotten our house. Mum took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel for dear life. Lights were on inside, so I knew Dad was home and awake. I watched the front door, waiting for it to open. For a second, I hoped. I hoped it would be like the first time Zan came to us, and Dad would rush out and be happy to see him. And then we'd all eat pizza on the living room floor while Zan slept. The front door didn't open. We all got out of the car and went inside. Dad was sitting with a drink in his hand. He looked at all three of us. He didn't seem the least bit surprised. Jack Helson called, he said warily. He wondered if I knew anything about the robbery. Robbery, I said, horrified by the word. It had been ricocheting in my head the whole drive home, but Mum and I had never said it out loud. Dad nodded. You stole his property. The idea of Zan being owned, being property, I hated it. Gosh, Sarah, Dad said, slamming down his glass so hard I thought it would shatter. The hell have you done? He was going to sell Zan to a lab, I said. The Thurston Foundation, Mum said. We saw the letter. He showed you this letter, Dad said. We opened it. You opened his confidential mail? Mum nodded. We did, because Peter had a hunch he was planning on selling Zan, and he was right. Peter's involved in this too, is he? Mum said nothing. What Jack Helson does with Zan is none of our concern, Dad said. It is too, I shouted. It is our concern, Mum echoed. We have obligations to Zan. The understanding with Helson was that Zan would not be used for biomedical experiments. As all this was going on, Zan was charging around the house, skidding on cushions and swiping books off the shelves, and then climbing higher to get at the next row. I think he may have pooped somewhere. He scampered into the kitchen, and I heard the fridge door opening and things hitting the floor. With disconcerting calm, said, Ben, get him under control and put him in his room. I left Mum and Dad to fight this out and went to Zan. He was sitting contentedly on the floor amid a pile of food, scooping yogurt out of the tub with his fingers. Hide, I sighed. I signed. Play. That caught his attention. Come, I signed, leading him into his suite. Inside, he looked at his bed for a few seconds, like he couldn't quite remember what that was for. He was used to sleeping on concrete now. Then he leapt onto it gleefully. From the shelf he took down one of his toys and arranged them around himself in a from the shelf he took down his old toys and arranged them around himself in a circle. It seemed such a simple, easy thing. Just a few little scraps of material and bits of plastic in a ring, and he felt safe. But I knew he wasn't, not yet, maybe not ever. All the way home, I'd let myself fantasize. It would be like this. Zan would live with us and would be my younger brother. We'd play in the backyard. We'd climb trees together. We'd watch the birds eat seed from their feeders. We'd throw leaves at each other and chase and tickle each other. I never thought, who will take care of him when I'm at school and Mom and Dad are at work? I never thought, how will we keep him safe? Keep him from hurting other people and himself. Brush teeth, I signed. Wear toothbrush, he signed back. He remembered toothbrush, even though he hadn't used one in months. I went to the little bathroom to check and found one. We kept plenty because Zan liked brushing his teeth a lot and tended to chew off the bristles after a couple of weeks. I gave him the new toothbrush and watched him go at it. He hadn't forgotten. Through the dark window, he looked outside into the backyard. Out, play. I shook my head, and he let me pick him up and put him back on his bed, encircled by his toys. He didn't smell very good. He needed another bath. I lay down beside him, putting my arm around him. I could feel his heart beating against my hand. I fell asleep on his bed, curled against him.